What is happening, friends? This is John LaCroix from Bulletproof Bear, and we are in the middle of a series of videos where we are discussing how to use music legally in your production. And to get some great music for your production, head over to catalog.bulletproofbear.com, or if you need a site license for your school, head over to store.bulletproofbear.com, click on the site license link, click on the number of students you have, and you can check out and get rolling right there. And not wasting any time here, let's get going. So when you're using music in your production, it's really going to fall into one of two categories. The first is a work for hire, and the second is a license. So first, let's talk about what a work for hire is. So depending on which side of the equation you're on, you can think of work for hire as buying or selling something. The classic example of a work for hire would be if you were employed by a specific company and you went into work to do some creative work. That work would fall under a work for hire, where everything that you did would be owned by the company, and you would hopefully receive some compensation, like a salary for that. So let's say they pay you X amount of dollars every week. This could be on music, you're writing tracks, and the company would then own those tracks. Or if you're doing any kind of graphic design, that graphic design would then be owned by the company. However, this is not limited to situations where you are employed going into the office. This could also be where you're freelancing, right? So you may get hired, or you may hire someone as a freelancer to do some work. If it's on a work for hire basis, there's an exchange of money for all the rights associated with that intellectual property. So let's look at one scenario. Let's pretend that I am an artist and I have a Spotify channel, and Nike hears some of my music and they want to use me to write some new music for their next big ad campaign. And I ask Nike, I say, "Hey Nike, is this a work for hire?" And they say yes. And that tells me that Nike is going to pay me a certain amount of money, and they are going to own all of the rights for whatever I deliver. That means that they're going to own the underlying composition, and they're also going to own the sound recording as well. This means that after I do this work for hire, I cannot do anything with this music anymore because I do not own it. Okay, so this is a work for hire. You're basically trading intellectual property for money. So a few areas that you might see this with respect to music, again, would be an advertising campaign. So a lot of advertising campaigns, they're looking for custom music, and they'll do a work for hire where they'll hire somebody to write this music custom to picture, and they will pay this person, and in exchange, they will now own the rights to those works, including the underlying composition and the master or sound recording. Another area that we see a work for hire would be on TV shows and films. Usually the score for a specific TV show by a composer would be on a work for hire basis, right? So the production company pays the composer, and in return, the composer assigns all rights as a part of this work for hire agreement back to the production company or the studio. This is very normal. So if you're working on an indie film or documentary and you hire a composer, this could be the setup that you would be looking at, where you would pay this composer and acquire those rights. And of course, we always want to get this in writing with a work for hire agreement. Now, one component about this that there always seems to be a little bit of confusion is that it is customary for the composer to receive his or her writer's share royalties through the rights organization. So if you've ever heard of societies like BMI or ASCAP or CSAC in the United States, a lot of composers are affiliated with one of these, and there may be language in the work for hire agreement that allows that composer to receive his or her writer's share royalties through these societies. And what that means is that every time this production, it could be an advertisement or a movie or TV show, every time it airs, that composer is allowed to receive money through that airing. Now, where the confusion takes place is who pays that money? Well, that money is going to be paid by the network. So that money is going to be paid by like CBS, NBC, Fox. That money is not going to be paid by the production company. So the production company or the network or the filmmaker definitely does not have to be worried about any additional payments outside of the work for hire agreement. So this is one of the misconceptions, I think, with these cheap royalty-free catalogs that are popping up. People think that if they don't use them, that they're going to have to pay additional royalties down the road. And that's just not true, because the reality is if you have something that's broadcasting, the networks are going to be paying those royalties anyway. Okay, so again, think of a work for hire as buying rights. You're buying rights from the composer, you're paying them, and then you're acquiring all those rights for the production. The next component that we're going to look at is licensing. And I like to think of licensing as essentially renting rights. Licensing comes into place where there is an artist song maybe that you want to use in your production. Licensing is going to be renting those rights, usually non-exclusively, for your production. So let's use the Nike example again, but let's kind of flip it around, and now let's look at a licensing scenario. So again, let's say that I'm an artist and I have my music on Spotify, and Nike is there. They're on my Spotify account, they're listening to something, and they're like, oh, this song is so great. We really want to use this in our next campaign. We want to use this specific song. So they contact me and they say, John, we'd really like to use this next song in our upcoming Nike campaign. We'd like to license this song from you. Licensing means that in exchange for some money, hopefully, they are going to rent the rights that they need for this specific production. So stick around for the next video where we're going to talk about the different components and terms of a music license.